In a world full of endless distractions, where every notification, every scroll, and every fleeting thought pulls you in a different direction, the real challenge is not finding focus, but training your mind to hold on to it. Because focus is not something you stumble upon in moments of silence. It is something you build, moment by moment, choice by choice. It is the quiet strength of bringing your attention back when it drifts, again and again, until your mind learns to follow your command instead of chasing the noise around it. Chapter 1. The Noise Within. Arjun's day always began with good intentions. He would wake up early, telling himself, "Today will be different." He would sit at his desk, open his notebook, and plan his tasks carefully. Study, work, improve. For a brief moment, everything felt clear. But clarity never lasted. Within minutes, his phone would light up. A message, a notification, a video recommendation that seemed too interesting to ignore. Just 1 minute, he would think. 1 minute became 10. 10 minutes became an hour. By the time he looked up, his plan had already slipped through his fingers. The worst part wasn't the distraction. It was the awareness. Somewhere deep inside, Arjun knew exactly what he was doing. He knew he was wasting time. He knew he was capable of more. But knowing wasn't enough. His mind felt like a crowded marketplace, noisy, restless, constantly pulling him in different directions. One thought said, "Focus." Another whispered, "Take a break." A third insisted, "You'll do it later." And later became his most dangerous habit. Days passed like this. Incomplete tasks piled up. Deadlines felt heavier. Confidence began to fade, not because he lacked ability, but because he couldn't stay with anything long enough to prove it. At night, he would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling. Why can't I just focus, he would wonder. It wasn't laziness. It wasn't a lack of dreams. In fact, his dreams were big, bigger than most people around him. But his mind refused to stay still long enough to chase them. One evening, exhausted and frustrated, Arjun boarded a train to clear his head. The compartment was alive with noise. Vendors calling out, children laughing, phones ringing, conversations overlapping. It felt exactly like his mind. Restless, loud, uncontrolled. He sank into his seat, scrolling through his phone again without thinking, until something unusual caught his attention. Across from him sat an old man, calm, still, unbothered. In the middle of all that chaos, the man was reading a book with complete focus. His eyes didn't wander. His posture didn't shift. It was as if the noise around him simply didn't exist. Arjun couldn't understand it. How can someone stay so focused in a place like this, he thought. For the first time, he stopped scrolling. For the first time in a long while, he simply observed. And in that moment, without realizing it, Arjun had already taken the first step. He had noticed the noise within him. The journey to focus had quietly begun. Chapter 2. The First Battle. The next morning, Arjun woke up with a different kind of determination. The memory of the old man on the train was still fresh in his mind. That calm, unshaken focus in the middle of chaos. It didn't feel like luck. It felt like control. And for the first time, Arjun wanted that control more than comfort. He sat at his desk, placed his phone face down, and opened his notebook. His plan was simple. Focus for 10 minutes. That was all. No big promises. No unrealistic goals. Just 10 minutes of complete attention. He took a deep breath and began. Chapter 2. The First Battle. The next morning, Arjun woke up with a different kind of determination. The memory of the old man on the train was still fresh in his mind. That calm, unshaken focus in the middle of chaos. It didn't feel like luck. It felt like control. And for the first time, Arjun wanted that control more than comfort. He sat at his desk, placed his phone face down, and opened his notebook. His plan was simple. Focus for 10 minutes. That was all. No big promises. No unrealistic goals. Just 10 minutes of complete attention. He took a deep breath and began. For a few seconds, everything went well. His eyes followed the words. His mind stayed with the task. It felt surprisingly easy. Then, without warning, the noise began. A thought slipped in quietly. Check your phone. He ignored it. Another thought followed. What if there's an important message? His focus wavered. Then came a stronger pull. Just one quick look. It won't hurt. His fingers twitched slightly. His eyes drifted toward the phone. And in that moment, Arjun saw something clearly for the first time. The battle wasn't outside. It was inside his own mind. He hadn't even touched his phone yet, but his attention was already gone. Frustration rose within him. He leaned back, exhaling sharply. Why is this so hard? He muttered to himself. He had always believed that distractions were the problem. Phones, apps, noise, people. But now he saw the truth. Even in silence, his mind was restless. Even without touching anything, it kept searching for escape. That realization hit harder than any failure before. For a moment, he felt like giving up. Maybe this is just how I am, he thought. Maybe I'm not built for focus. But then another thought appeared, quieter but stronger. Train your mind. The old man's words returned, steady and clear. Arjun straightened in his chair. If his mind could pull him away, maybe he could pull it back. He leaned forward again and returned to his work. Seconds later, his thoughts drifted again. This time he noticed it, and instead of following the distraction, he gently brought his attention back. No anger, no self-criticism, just a quiet decision. Come back. A minute passed, then another. His mind wandered again. Again, he brought it back. Each time felt like lifting a heavy weight. Small, invisible, but exhausting. By the 5th minute, he felt tired. Not physically, but mentally. His focus kept slipping like sand through his fingers. But he didn't stop. He kept returning. When the timer finally reached 10 minutes, Arjun leaned back and closed his eyes. It didn't feel like a victory. It felt like a struggle. But deep inside, something had shifted. For the first time, he hadn't been completely controlled by his impulses. For the first time, he had resisted. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy. But it was real. That day, Arjun didn't become focused. He became aware of the fight, and that awareness marked the beginning of his training. Because focus is not built in moments of comfort. It is built in moments of resistance, when your mind pulls away, and you choose to bring it back. Again, and again, and again. Chapter 3. The Discipline of Return. The first few days felt like a constant struggle. Arjun kept his promise to sit down every morning and focus, but nothing about it felt natural. His mind resisted almost immediately, like a restless animal that refused to stay still. He would begin with determination, telling himself, "Stay here, just stay here." But within moments, the familiar pull returned. Random thoughts, old memories, sudden urges to check his phone. Ideas that felt urgent for no reason at all. Each distraction felt convincing. Each one whispered, "This is important, you can come back later." And many times he believed it. Some days he lost the battle within minutes. He would look up and realize half an hour had passed, and he hadn't done anything meaningful. Frustration followed quickly. He clenched his jaw, shut his notebook, and leaned back in his chair. This isn't working, he thought. For a while, it seemed easier to return to his old habits, to give in, scroll, and escape the discomfort. At least there, he didn't have to fight himself. But something had changed. Now, even when he gave in, he noticed it. The awareness stayed, and that awareness made it harder to ignore what he was doing. One evening, after another unproductive day, Arjun sat quietly, replaying his efforts in his mind. He realized he had been measuring success the wrong way. He expected focus to mean never getting distracted, but that expectation only made him feel like a failure. Because the truth was simple. His mind would wander. That wasn't the problem. The real question was, what did he do next? The next morning, he approached his practice differently. No pressure to be perfect. No expectation to stay focused the entire time. Just one rule. Every time his mind wandered, he would bring it back. That was it. He sat down and began again. Within seconds, his thoughts drifted. This time, he didn't get frustrated. He noticed it and returned. A few seconds later, it happened again. He returned again. There was no drama, no anger, no self-criticism. Just a quiet repetition of the same action. Come back. At first, it felt small, almost meaningless. But as minutes passed, something subtle began to shift. He wasn't fighting his mind anymore. He was training it. Each return was like a repetition in an invisible workout. The movement was simple, but the effect was powerful. His attention started staying a little longer each time. Not perfect, but longer. Days turned into weeks. The sessions grew from 10 minutes to 20, then 30. There were still bad days. Days when his focus scattered completely. But instead of quitting, he relied on the one thing he had learned. Return. No matter how many times he drifted, he came back. And slowly, that consistency began to reshape his mind. The noise didn't disappear, but it lost its control. Arjun noticed it in small moments. He could read a page without checking his phone. He could sit with a task without feeling the urge to escape. He could catch distractions before they pulled him too far away. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, but it was real. One afternoon, as he sat working, he realized something surprising. Minutes had passed, and he hadn't thought about leaving. He paused and looked around. Nothing had changed in his environment, but inside something was different. For the first time, focus didn't feel forced. It felt natural. Arjun smiled slightly and returned to his work, because now he understood something deeply. Focus is not about holding your attention perfectly. It is about the discipline of bringing it back, again and again, until staying becomes easier than leaving. And in that simple act of returning, he was no longer losing to his mind. He was shaping it. Chapter 4. The Shift. The change didn't arrive with a dramatic moment. There was no sudden burst of motivation. No single day where everything became easy. If anything, the transition was so subtle that Arjun almost missed it. It began with small differences. One morning, he sat at his desk and started working, just like he had done for weeks. He expected the usual resistance, the pull of distractions, the restless thoughts, the urge to escape, but it didn't come immediately. His mind felt quieter, not silent but calmer, like a busy road that had slowly begun to clear. He noticed it but didn't celebrate. Instead, he continued. Minutes passed, then more. For the first time, he didn't feel like he was forcing himself to stay. He simply stayed. The effort that once felt heavy now felt lighter. Not gone, but lighter. Over the next few days, the pattern continued. He still had distractions. His mind still wandered, but something had changed in how he responded. The gap between distraction and awareness had shortened. Earlier, he would get lost for long stretches before realizing it. Now he caught himself quickly, and when he did, returning felt natural, almost automatic. That was the shift, not perfection, control. Arjun began to notice this change beyond his study sessions. When he spoke to someone, he listened more carefully. When he ate, he tasted the food instead of rushing through it. When he walked, he was aware of his surroundings instead of being lost in thought. His attention was no longer scattered across everything. It was present, steady, intentional. With this came a quiet confidence. Tasks that once felt overwhelming now felt manageable, not because they had become easier, but because his mind no longer ran away from them. He could sit, he could stay, he could finish. One evening, as he reviewed his work, he noticed something that surprised him. He had completed everything he had planned for the day. No rush, no last-minute panic, no guilt, just steady progress. He leaned back in his chair, letting the realization sink in. This is what control feels like, he thought. Not intense, not overwhelming, just calm and consistent. The biggest difference wasn't in what he was doing. It was in how he was doing it. Earlier, his actions were driven by impulses, whatever felt easiest or most tempting in the moment. Now his actions were guided by choice, and that changed everything. A few days later, someone asked him, "How are you suddenly so focused?" Arjun paused for a moment. He thought about the struggle, the failures, the countless times he had brought his attention back. He smiled slightly. "It's not sudden," he said. "You just didn't see the process." Because the truth was simple. Focus didn't come from a single decision. It came from hundreds of small ones, made every time his mind tried to drift, and he chose to return. That was the shift, from reacting to deciding, from being pulled to choosing where to stay. And in that shift, Arjun had gained something far more powerful than focus. He had gained control over his own mind. Chapter 5. Mastery in Silence. Months passed, and life around Arjun remained just as busy as before. The world didn't slow down for him. Notifications still appeared. Conversations still overlapped. Responsibilities still demanded his time and energy. But something within him had changed in a way that could not be undone. One evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of gold and orange, Arjun found himself boarding a train again. It was the same route, the same kind of crowded compartment, the same noise. Vendors called out, children laughed loudly, phones rang with endless alerts. People moved in and out, filling the space with constant motion. Months ago, this environment would have swallowed his attention completely. But today, it felt different. Not quieter, just less powerful. Arjun took his seat by the window and placed his bag beside him. For a moment, he simply observed. The chaos, the movement, the noise, and then gently, he turned inward. He opened his notebook and began working. There was no resistance, no internal argument, no sudden urge to escape. His mind stayed where he placed it. Thoughts still appeared from time to time, but they no longer pulled him away. They passed like distant sounds, noticed but not followed. He wrote steadily, focused, present. Minutes turned into an hour, and he hadn't once reached for his phone. He hadn't once drifted far enough to lose himself. For the first time, he wasn't practicing focus. He was living it. At one point, he paused and looked up. The train was just as loud as before. Nothing outside had changed, and yet everything felt calm. In that moment, he remembered the old man, the one who had first shown him what focus looked like. He scanned the compartment, half expecting to see him again. But the seat was empty. Arjun smiled quietly. The lesson had never been about the man. It had been about what the man represented. Control, discipline, stillness within movement. He looked back at his notebook and continued working. Not because he forced himself to, but because he chose to. That was the difference. As the train moved forward, cutting through the noise of the evening, Arjun felt a deep sense of clarity. He understood something now that he hadn't before. Focus is not the absence of distraction. It is the ability to remain steady despite it. It is not about escaping the noise of the world. It is about becoming stronger than it. And that strength is built quietly, through small, consistent acts of returning day after day. There was no applause for this transformation. No one around him noticed, but that didn't matter, because the greatest victories are often invisible. They happen within. As the train slowed near his stop, Arjun closed his notebook and looked out the window one last time. The sky had darkened. The noise continued. Life moved on. But now so did he, calm, steady, and in control of where his attention would go. And in that quiet mastery, he had found something more valuable than focus. He had found freedom, the freedom to choose what matters, the freedom to stay, the freedom to become the person he once struggled to be. And it all began with a simple decision: to return, again, and again, and again. Here's a powerful, viral-ready YouTube package for your story. As the world grows louder, most people lose themselves in the noise. But a few learn to rise above it, not by escaping distractions, but by mastering their attention. Remember this: your mind will try to pull you in 100 directions, but every time you bring it back, you take control. And when you take control of your mind, you take control of your life. So start today, not with perfection, but with one simple act. Come back, again, and again, and again. If this story inspired you, don't just watch it. Apply it. Start with 10 minutes of focus today. Comment below: I will focus to commit to yourself. Like this video if you're ready to take control of your mind. And subscribe for more powerful stories that transform your life.